Alright guys, hope everyone's well and welcome back to the channel. So I'm going to run you through what my push one session looks like. There's been a few alterations to the session, or a decent bit actually, since I last filmed it, so hope you enjoy. Starting off, we have a lateral raise variation. I always like to start with a lateral raise. Reason being is that I'm going to be torn the shoulder joint and it just feels a bit safer going into heavy presses after. It's not going to take away from your heavy presses because it's not that fatiguing an exercise. Your side delts can never be too big. So 2 sets followed by a drop set to kick things off today. And what I'm doing here is, you'll see I'm not sitting holding the handles. The reason being is removing my hand from the handle gives me a bit more freedom over my arm path. So instead of being stuck in a fixed position, I can manipulate that, be in a more comfortable position to bias my side delt. When your up arm's in front of the torso slightly, you've got a better ability to stabilise the load and use your rotator cuff to do so. Hence why I have it gripless. So that's what I'm doing here. Just because a machine's got like a handle doesn't mean necessarily need to use it if it's not more favourable. So we've next got a flat press, the Mega Mass flat press, which I'm getting on with very well at the moment. And a few things have changed with my pressing when it comes to like a machine-based press is I'm not locking out aggressively. The reason being is that last portion is going to be mainly your tricep and delt. There's not a lot of pick there, and it's also very heavy there, so it keeps the challenge where I want the challenge, my pick. So full range of motion, it's a good place to start, but once you become more experienced, there's some times where there's a caveat to it and you might want to kind of shorten your range. So thinking about not locking out aggressively. I'm also not arching too much, so just because I'm strong there doesn't mean it's more favourable for biceps effect. So not arching excessively, not using a large range of motion or too large a range of motion really that I can't really get a good sound from a pick. And also I'm thinking about having the pressure towards that part of my hand as I'm pressing, instead of maybe the outside of the hand towards the thinky. So give those weak cues of thigh safe to help. And then from there, I'm just thinking about pressing myself into the back pads as hard as I can, and not kind of allowing any change in my torso throughout the movement. So yeah, we're going for 3 plates here. It's probably going to be a low rep set because I just can't be bothered putting all the small ones on. So I just thought, screw it, we're going for 3 plates. So I imagine I'll get a 3 rep set, but I'll get 4 next week, 5 next week. And I just want to go for it, to be honest. So we'll see how it goes. So I went pretty well, all things considered. So 4 rep set with 120, which was the progression. It's a really heavy press this, and those 3 adjustments I've made to my pressing might not mean I'm lifting as heavy as I possibly can, but if it means I'm getting as best as similar as I possibly can, That's ultimately the goal here, because I've got quite strong at pressing movements in the past. I mean, I benched 130 when I was like 17, stacked chest presses pretty easily, lifted a lot of weight, but my chest was still a weakness, so clearly something needs to change in terms of how I'm approaching my presses, because just getting strong hasn't worked. So next up we've got high incline dumbbell press, and here the goal is to get some upper pec and also front delt. And when we're doing any sort of upper pec movement, you want your arm tucked, you want your upper arm a bit closer to the side, which might mean you need a narrow grip if you're using like a Smith. Reason being is when you're here, even if you're pressing on what looks like an incline, if your elbow's flared a lot, it's more of a flat press due to the line where it's travelling. You want your upper arm to go low to high here, as I mentioned before. So what I'm also thinking about during the dumbbell press as well is that rib cage position once again. So ensuring I'm not here, keep my core braced. You can keep your core braced while still staying proud and not allowing your shoulders to come forward. We don't want to be here, and then what I'm thinking about and what you see very often is the eccentric chest position's good. They start the concentric driving up and see that shift, see that change. So you just want everything rigid and still, only the upper arm moving and the shoulder slightly. So we've next got a bodyweight dip, and my warm up here is literally just like a rep or two with my bodyweight and then I jump in. That's something I really kind of cut down on, warming up when I don't need to, especially if you're accurate and you're not just like throwing weight about mindlessly. The amount you need to warm up after you've done like a movement for each muscle group is pretty minimal, so keeping them pretty low just to save my energy for the work that actually matters, the set itself. So here we've got 2 sets once again, and the goal here is to hit the triceps, the lower pec. I'm not trying to isolate anything, it's a compound movement, so treating it as such. And I'm just making sure I take it for as large a range as I can. I'll keep my sternum angled the same. And also, I'm thinking about making sure like my chest doesn't like drop, etc. throughout the movement. So yeah, 2 sets here. First one will be for a 5.5. Can't forget the biscuit on the end. And then the second set is to be determined. I can't remember what we got last week. So yeah, goal here is 5. We tip, if you're a male watching this and you do dips, watch out for the boys. If you start doing weighted dips, it's not a good experience, and I know from experience. So something I see a lot on pressing movements in particular is people pressing with their wrist flexed back. So when you're performing any press, you want the barbell dumbbell machine situated right in the base of your hand here. We don't want the bar sitting here, because then wrist isn't stacked, it's a challenge for the wrist joint, which simply means you're putting stress on your wrist. So whenever you're pressing, think about pressing with the base of your hand. And then also, what I typically see is throughout the set, people's wrist starts flexing, moving throughout. So once you've established that grip, you've got your wrist straight, squeeze the bar extremely hard, especially on Smith presses. This is where I see it. So a Smith press, obviously you need to unrack the bar for you to perform the movement. So before unracking, just make sure your wrist is slightly flexed. So once you press and twist, it's then stacked. Or alternatively, after you unrack it, you then need to adjust your wrist position to get bang on. So as you can see, I decided to take my hoodie off, which the mic was connected to, which was very smart of myself. And then I proceeded to hang it up. So the rest of this video is going to be performed in a voice-over format to accommodate for that. So we moved on to a dumbbell chest fly. I like doing this after presses because it's a movement that's very heavy in the stretch position. So I don't think it's one that will be the most comfortable if you performed it first in the session before getting a lot of blood in that region. And here I'm just thinking about getting as low as I can actively go. So in the past, I was like forcing myself lower than this. In a range of motion, realistically can use my pecking and just letting myself get pulled into that position where my pec's probably not doing the work getting it out of that position. So instead, I'm thinking about ensuring I only lower as far as I can while keeping it on the pec and initiating with the pec here, and think about driving my elbows together as I press. The reason I keep driving the elbows together is that's the function of the pec. That's what the pec does. It drives the upper arm, the humerus, into the midline of the body. So that's what I'm cueing throughout the movement. Because it doesn't matter where our hands are starting or finishing, really. All that matters is what the upper arm's doing throughout the movement. So we've got 2 sets here. And what I'll do after my second set is I'll finish by going down to that stretch position, holding it for a good like 5 to 10 seconds, as long as I realistically can without my upper arm getting pulled off my body. So that's what I plan to do here. And then after that, we move on to the tricep portion of the session. And we've got a GM press, which is like a tricep press. And this machine's brilliant because it's very heavy in the stretch. When we think about all the pressing movements I've done, they are pretty hard to kind of finish and quite hard in that middle part of the rip. So it makes sense to move on to challenge the tricep in its lengthened position. I don't have a lot of short and based work just because I really achieved that with my pressing. So onto the close grip press. And what I'm thinking about doing as I lower into the stretch is thinking about like tucking my elbows. So I'm trying to like fold at the elbow, thinking about driving my elbow towards the floor. And I've got the handle set so they finish close to the shoulder, which will allow me to challenge my tricep more. Whereas if I wanted to just make this a stance, I'd put the handles lower, allow my elbows to travel out. And then we move on to a rope cable crunch. And here, the main focus here is just moving at the spine. So I'm thinking about getting my chest to my belly button and my chest as far away from the belly button as I can. I'm not focusing on here getting as far up and down as possible because that's not the function of our abs. That's not the function of the core. So that cue I think helps a lot of people. And the benefit of doing this facing away from the cable stack is it allows me to brace against the cable stack to give me a point of stability, a point of application that allows me to not move my hip. So a lot of people when they perform this, they struggle to keep their hip static and not move about there. So if that is yourself, maybe try it facing away. It can also, depending on how you set up, allow you to load that length and range more. So I've got 2 sets here, and then
what I basically do is I'll perform the ab crunch, I superset with the plank, and then I will then go into an overhead extension, and then I'll basically repeat through that, kind of like in a circuit fashion. Reason being is that gives my triceps more rest between the sets. That gives my abs more rest between the sets, so the work's higher quality across the board. And the benefit of doing something like a plank is it's not a conventional movement you'll necessarily see people do for muscle growth, but it trains the transverse abdominis. So it trains your TDA, in other words, which has a big part in your ability to control your midsection, which will help with our ability to basically like display your physique on stage, or just like have good core bracing and also be able to control your midsection throughout the day. So basically, it can help your ability to display your physique better, and also improve your ability to use your core when you're doing any sort of compound lift. So we've got a plank here for a minute. Basically the longest minute in my life and longest minute in my week for sure. So when I'm performing it as well, I'm being really intentful of using my core, breathing out my air, and thinking about crunching down the abs, not just going through the motions here. And then we finished with an overhead extension. And here, what I'm doing is I'm leaning my shoulder against the cable stack to give me a consistent setup and to give me a bit more stability. I'm using a cuff here because as the weight started to get heavier, it gets a bit difficult just holding onto the ball of the cable. So that's where the cuff comes in and acts as a good tool here. So 2 sets each arm, pausing in that stretch position because that's where the value lies, and then driving up. And I'm thinking about dragging out that top position, not throwing out, just to keep the elbows happy, not to put too much stress on them. And then here, I just don't really rest much between sides because it's a movement that's not that demanding on your fitness. I don't really require the rest, so I just kind of rattle through them in quite fast succession without, of course, rushing it, if that makes sense. So 2 sets here each arm, and then I finish it with a forced rep, some partials, and hold the stretch to rinse and get as much effective working as I can.
Alright guys, so that's a wrap for the video. So good session as a whole. Progressed the majority of the stuff, and the stuff I didn't quite maybe get a progression on is things I'm not as concerned with, because they're just movements that progress slower. Not all movements you're going to get additional rep every week, which is fine. Be a good session as a whole. If you did enjoy the video, any support's massively appreciated, so drop me a like, subscribe, leave a comment, and sorry about the footage that I voiced over. I just realised towards the end, when I took my hoodie off, my mic was on my hoodie. So every time I spoke, you of course couldn't hear what I was saying. So that was very intelligent of me, but hope you enjoyed it regardless. Any support's massively appreciated.